Hello, Dr. Autry. My name is Anissa Garcia, and I'm going to be discussing Chapter 7, the screening and assessment. So, during this chapter, they talk about the importance of screening and assessment and talking about the differences between them. So, to my understanding, screening is the simple questions that mental health providers or health providers ask to assess to get a general understanding of the client at hand. And what I really liked about this chapter is that it discussed about cultural differences, which I think is very important that a professional needs to consider when asking these questions. The chapter discusses how there can be a translation deficit, how if the mental health care provider is English speaking while the client is of Spanish speaking, and how there are words that don't necessarily translate. So due to that translation error, in effect, there can be a miscommunication causing the mental health provider to see the client as an addict when in reality he's not or she's not, or the mental health provider is seeing them even worse, not as an addict, and the client is, but it was unable to be detected due to that translation error. Another really important part of the book that I found interesting was the need for screening for co-occurring addictive disorders. For example, the book talked about how gambling problem and alcohol use are commonly found together, and how screenings need to be more comprehensive in catching those two addictive disorders. The book then goes into discussing assessment tools, and to my understanding, assessment tools are more in depth. So the screening gives the direction, this person needs help. Assessment is more in depth. What are the goals? How does this person need help? What kind of plan are we making to help this person? As a future mental health provider, I think it is extremely important for us to understand the differences between screening and assessment, and the importance it is to provide a good assessment intake process. Additionally, the last note I want to make is the importance of the book talks about the importance of assessing for also co-occurring disorders, which is very important in how a mental health provider needs to be extremely patient and understanding to a person, because a person might be in for alcoholism but might also have depression or anxiety, and how they need to work slow and provide an environment where this patient feels open and freely to consciously or unconsciously reveal these co-occurrent disorders. So I think that was really interesting about the book. Next, I want to go into the video that I saw, which was the biology of opioid use. I'm currently aware that there's an opioid use crisis epidemic happening in the United States, and that it affects the lives of many individuals. The video opens by discussing common misconceptions of opioid use and how people don't necessarily understand the complicated process of what the drug does to the brain. Typically, people are just assume that the person can just stop doing drugs. You just need to stop doing drugs to get better. Additionally, people will say they weren't raised like that they weren't raised to do drugs, which in reality they weren't. However, the drug hijacks pleasure areas of the brain that manipulate the brain into thinking that this drug is a necessary and vital part of living, such as drinking water, eating food, breathing air. this drug has hijacked the brain into thinking that this drug is a necessary part of their life, and they can't just stop doing the drug, because just like if you stop drinking water or stop eating, they will die. And especially when you think about opioid use, which I didn't know, people who are addicted to opioids don't necessarily chase the high of the opioid, because there is no high. It's not like cocaine or other drugs. People who are addicted to opioids are just avoiding the normal of what they once were, having that withdrawal process, which I thought was very important because that was something I did not know before. Secondly, the video discusses the hippocampus and the amygdala. So the hippocampus is, how he explains it, the black and white memory. So this is the general direction, like this is how I'm getting to the store. I'm going to turn right, I'm going to turn left, I'm going to find a parking spot, and this is the general black and white memory of the brain. However, the amygdala is what adds the color. Going to this store, going to this restaurant, what did it feel? It is those feelings, and it is those memories attached to the black and white memory portion of the brain. So when relating this to drugs, the drug is the feeling, is the high, is the normal that is implemented into this black and white picture. So the hippocampus says, this is the way that we're going to this doctor. This is the way that this doctor can give me what I need so I can receive this normal, this drug that makes me feel at peace. So understanding these two processes of how addiction works is very important to understanding that people can't just quit doing drugs. And I think if people better understood that drugs play such a vital role in changing the brain of people who are addicts, then there'd be a more empathetic understanding. And just like he said in the video, these people have a disease and need to be rehabilitated, which goes back to last video blog's conversation of providing that rehabilitation, understanding that this is a disease just like diabetes and heart disease. This needs help, that people need help. After learning all this week, it has given me so much more information and so much understanding of the ins and outs of addiction. The book discussed the assessment and screening, which provided me new information, a better understanding of what types of questions to ask addicts, and how it's not just a simple, oh, do you do this, do you do that? It's more comprehensive in knowing the individual and providing questions that the person can answer. Additionally, understanding the different ways that the drug affects the brain is extremely important, so that now I can be an advocate for those who struggle with addiction and help people gain a better understanding of what drugs do to the brain. And I think that's very important. The most important takeaway point that I've learned through the readings and through the videos was the practice of patience, and how people who struggle through addiction need an environment of understanding and need an environment of patience, and how that's extremely important in the rehabilitation of individuals, especially in the assessment portion. Giving that space of patience can help you better as a mental health professional, giving individuals that space to feel comfortable and reveal parts of them that they might not necessarily know themselves, can be extremely vulnerable. And if you are not creating that space, then you cannot be an effective counselor. And I hope in the future I'm able to practice that through my religion and through practicing coping skills. I think an important part that I try to implement into my life is letting Jesus into my heart. I say that constantly, and I say that to my friends a lot of the time when faced with difficult, stressful situations. I take a pause and I verbally say out loud, I need to let Jesus into my heart. And that is just practicing that patience, that I need to stop, and I need to stop passing judgment, and I need to be patient. And I think continuing that implementation will allow me to gain that patience and that understanding to help future individuals that I see as clients. And with that said, I want to say thank you to Dr. Autry for providing all this material and giving me the space to grow and giving me the knowledge to prepare myself for future endeavors. And I will see you next time in vlog 3. Bye.